one of my guides took me through space, and it was one of the most beautiful experiences that I'd ever had. I traveled, I saw a nebula, and when I looked down at my body wasn't there. And then I heard, "You're an orb." I realized I was an orb. Wow. And I said to myself, wow, this is what it's like when you see orbs. That's what's really in there. It's a whole human being. It's a soul inside of an orb. And so I traveled and I saw, like I said, nebula, and then we traveled to another planet, and my guide was there, and we were standing in a corner, even though I was a bit distorted because I was not on the same, their energy and frequency was different. So I was like, my body was a bit different there. And we watched the ET race, and my guide was telling me, look, there's intelligent life in other planets. Here is one. I never got the name of who they were, but they had translucent skin, very white translucent skin. And they had, some of them, they glowed from inside. And I don't know why they glowed. Like some of them would glow like an aura. Their aura basically would show from inside. Blue, green, other colors. And so I watched them for a while, and then I was kind of pulled out and taken into another dimension and another experience.
Podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands Podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands Podcast. Well, welcome to Broaderlands Podcast. What an honor to have you back.
Thanks for having me again, Boo Boo.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk to you, and I love your insights, and I love your experience, your near-death experience. Maybe before we get started, you can share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Serumaga, and I am a near-death experiencer, among other things in my life. And I share my story not only by talking about it, but also writing. And I am a studying geneticist, and I just participate in trying to make the world a better place. Mostly inspired not only by just life and like the love of my child and things like that, but also inspired by some things that I learned in my near-death experience.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe you can take us into your near-death experience and share as much details as you like.
Sure. Well, the last time I was on, I shared about my near-death experience. So I wanted to pull out a couple of things that I feel are relevant for just where we are right now and the things that are going on. So one of the things I want to focus on is whenever somebody has a near-death experience, they're getting kind of a reboot in life because they needed it. But people don't have to have a near-death experience in order to have that same type of reboot, which I know that you know that, Boo Boo. So one of the things that rebooted me from my near-death experience that I still remember is I had 3 guides, and one of the guides in the astral realm was telling me about things that were negative that were happening in the world. And the reason why I was being told this was because I asked about it. And the reason I asked about it was because before I had my incident that, caused my organs to completely fail, have sepsis, my organs were shutting down and everything, I was very disenchanted with the world and very unhappy. And I think I was probably approaching a little bit of depression too before all of this happened. Quite honestly, because I was kind of an overwhelmed single mother, and I was really frustrated with just the status quo of the world. And how there seems to be just an unfairness where some people are able to do things in advance and others are not able to do things in advance. And so it made me think a lot about corruption, and it made me think a lot about what else is out there, things that I don't even know or are in the news. So one of the things that my guide showed me was a little bit of that corruption. And the way that I was shown and taught things was not by being told, but by being pushed into the experience, even though I was protected, like I could be pulled out at any moment. And the guide would show me the answers to what I was asking. So for example, is it okay to say the S word, the SA word here? Okay.
Sure.
So, one of the things I was shown about was some sex trafficking that was going on and how people are exploited, how children were exploited and what was going on behind that and why. I wasn't necessarily shown all of the details because I don't think I could have handled all of the details. I would have been pulled out of that situation pretty quickly, but I was shown that that is actually happening on a larger scale, like on an industry level scale, not just, one-off things, and how it's perpetuated. Another one of the things I was shown from a corruption perspective was, um, I was, and I didn't even think about this or know much about it before my NDE, was a building where in the building they actually had an organ harvesting business. Like it was actually an industry, what's the word I'm looking for? Undercover, not really undercover. Like I'm having a loss for words as to, when something's like a covert industry, it's behind the scenes, like that.
Like they sell it
Um,
on the dark web.
yeah, like that. Yeah. Black
Yeah,
market
yeah,
industry.
okay,
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. So, so I was shown that, and I was shown a couple of people who were desperate to get money for themselves. So they sold a couple of their own organs or family members' organs. But then there were some people that were being taken. And unfortunately, the sex trafficking and the organ harvesting industry are tied together. They cross each other. And so I saw that this is the level of corruption that's going on behind the scenes. And, so of course, um, in being shown all of that. Oh, and I was also shown some corruption in Hollywood. And I want to reference that because when I first started talking about my NDE, I started talking about it in 2022, I believe. I think it was like November of 2022. So when I started seeing a lot of things happening now in regards to Hollywood, I wasn't really too surprised, but it also for me validated the things that I saw in my NDE, because what I saw in Hollywood was the corruption around children in Hollywood, exploitation, I should say, around children and women. And I saw, one particular person, um, that I didn't know, of course, in my NDE, but I was shown, this particular person. And the same thing in the fashion industry too. So I feel like there may be some things that are going to happen in the fashion industry. Now, I want to preface this in saying that people in Hollywood are not necessarily evil themselves, but there are a lot of evil activities. So I don't feel like it's fair to say, oh, this celebrity did this and that celebrity did this. So basically it is with certain, celebrities just get caught up in certain things. we live in a world where hurt people hurt people. So I think that's more of what the narrative is that there's not necessarily, one person, with evil intent. It's a spirit within the entire industry of abuse and people hurting each other. So, that's what happened. That's one of the things that my guide showed me. One of the guides showed me in my NDE. Now, the reason that I was shown all of this, again, like I said before, is I was asked to be shown this to help me to understand that this world is very impermanent and to not really focus on things of this world. And I believe I was also shown that so that I can reframe what my purpose is in my life, to focus on light and focus on bringing light instead of focusing on the darkness, because the darkness can be overwhelming. So, that's just one of the things that I felt was relevant today that I wanted to share about, darkness versus light. And another thing that I was shown is that, and I mentioned this before when I was sharing about this long time ago, that within 5 to 7 years, we're going to be in a completely transformed world and in a completely transformed existence. And even though we may have some challenges right now, ultimately, things are going to be a lot better. Ultimately, things are going to be the way that we should be, or we'd be further on our way to how we should be existing in this life. Mm-hmm. So don't give up in whatever you're doing as far as sharing your light, understanding the light. Don't let the darkness get to you. Keep going, because where we are now is not the focus. The other side is the focus, but in the next few years, we're going to be bringing the other side into our reality.
I love that. I don't know if you know the acronym of HOPE, help other people evolve. And I think that's exactly what you've been doing with your work. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know we've got a lot more new subscribers since the last time you were here, because you came on when I was just starting off, and I appreciate.
And you were just a baby.
And yeah. So maybe if you don't mind, maybe touch on what happened for those
Sure.
who missed you the first time.
Sure. Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, life was very overwhelming. I got a really bad infection, and my daughter, we were supposed to come to see family, and I asked my daughter, should we still go, because I just didn't feel great. And she said yes. That made the entire difference of having a support system around me versus not. So we traveled, and when we, got home, I started feeling worse. And then I ended up in the hospital. I was admitted into the hospital and had a reaction, to a medicine, then had renal failure and, sepsis. I was induced in a coma. My organs started shutting down, and, I was on life support, which is called ECMO. And just to explain the gravity of, compared to where I was now to where I am or where I was then to where I am now. And as one of the reasons why I decided to go into medicine, because other things that my guides told me on the other side about how amazing our bodies are, how amazing our souls are. My body was shutting down. I was, there's a machine where it oxygenates your lungs. And in that machine, when there's pink foam, that means that's CO2 being pulled out of your lungs. That machine was completely filled with CO2. and my CO2 levels were around 214, I was told. Your maximum CO2 level is supposed to be 35 on a lab. So mine was like several times higher. And at that point, you are expected, if you do survive by a miracle, that you will be in a vegetated state because all of the brain cells just die. Not only that, I had complete sepsis. So my blood was poisoned, complete renal failure. They were talking about trying to do a lung transplant with me to save me, trying to do a kidney transplant to save me. But I didn't qualify because I was in a comatose state, and you have to at least be able to get up and walk around after you have those things done. So I one of the things I learned is like this is the several different types of death. I started in a coma, and when you're in a coma, you hover between life and death. You travel out of your body into the astral realm or spirit realm, and you travel back into your body sometimes. So I was able to go out of my body. I was able to see doctors doing a procedure on me, argue with them, even though they couldn't hear me. I was able to go back into my body when some friends from a church I used to go to came and, sang to me, sang by my bedside. And I was able to go back out again and go into space. One of my guides took me through space, and it was one of the most beautiful experiences that I'd ever had. I traveled, I saw a nebula, and when I looked down at my body wasn't there. And then I heard, "You're an orb." I realized I was an orb. Wow. And I said to myself, wow, this is what it's like when you see orbs. That's what's really in there. It's a whole human being. It's a soul inside of an orb. And so I traveled, and I saw, like I said, nebula, and then we traveled to another planet. And my guide was there, and we were standing in a corner, even though I was a bit distorted because I was not on the same, their energy and frequency was different. So I was like, my body was a bit different there. And we watched the ET race, and my guide was telling me, look, there's intelligent life in other planets. Here is one. I never got the name of who they were, but they had translucent skin, very white translucent skin. And, they had some of them, they glowed from inside, and I don't know why they glowed. Like, some of them would glow like an aura. Their aura basically would show from inside. Blue, green, other colors. And, so I watched them for a while, and then I was kind of pulled out and, taken into another dimension and another experience. And so, in a coma, I was able to do that. And then close to the end, I went through what's called a life review, where one of my guides kind of took me through my personal life. I learned about things of the world, but then also my personal life. I was shown things from my past. I was shown things from what would be the future. So I got future predictions of my own life as well as the world. And, it was kind of like a counseling session. That's what a life review is. You go through, you rectify, you kind of, just get an idea as to, and better understanding about your existence, on Earth. And also you receive a lot of love. You receive a lot of encouragement to share the love that you've gotten, which is very hard to do, in this world. just because we live in a very unloving world. We live in a boot camp, and that's what Earth is. And so, it was a life-changing experience that nobody has to go through in order to, because with it, came trauma, of course, and you had to rebuild your life and things like that. But it's something that I learned everybody can go through. I just went through it because, God and the universe felt like I needed that in order to gain perspective that I was not able to gain before then.
I love that. You talk about merging. I know you talk about merging.
Mm-hmm.
And, can you share on what that means and your experience with that? Because I think it's profound and beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for bringing that up. So one of the things that my guides did, one specifically, in that whole that the whole time where he was teaching me about different things, and in my life review, one of the lessons that I got was that everything was conscious, and all plants, all animals are conscious. So I know that some people try to stay away from eating animals because they're conscious, but guess what? Plants are conscious too. Mm-hmm. So, the way that I was taught by my guide was just to be put in the experience, like I was saying. So everything was telepathic and then just put into the experience. So I heard merge, and then I would merge I merged with a tree. I merged with a lily. I merged with a fish. And, I didn't merge into them and act like them. I actually became them. So, for example, when I went into the fish, I merged with the fish. My mind was not the same way that it was now. It was actually a fish mind. So I lost all sense of feeling of responsibility or complex thought, or I was literally just looking around like a fish and being a fish. And honestly, it felt really good to not have a lot of thoughts. So, the other thing is that, in regards to the tree, I was told that trees are conscious, and they are also, I was shown the nature of them. They are life forms that are more advanced than us. I know that that's really hard to believe, but they are. And that's the reason why they're still. They present themselves on this earth because they are so advanced. They don't need to eat. They don't need to eat the way that we do, or, fend after food, fend after all of these things that we need to. They exist in this world just needing to root themselves in the ground, connect with their family, and live off of the sun and the air. They actually have complex thoughts. They feel certain ways about us. They look at us as, oh, those poor humans, but they feel like it's kind of like a maternal feeling towards us, or a big brother type of feeling towards us, but they're very wise. They longed for the day that we will realize that they're not just stuff, that they're actually an organism that we can communicate with. So this is what I got in my NDE, or what I was shown in my NDE in 2015. And then it took me 7 years to start talking about it, because I was like, this is crazy. I had to, analyzed myself and my situation, and, what happened, and didn't feel ready to talk about it. Finally talked about it in 2022, started telling people, guess what? Trees are conscious. We're going to find that out. In 2023, I see articles that scientists study and find out that trees are conscious, and that they actually, the same, ocular part that we have in our eyes, they have on their entire bodies. They could recognize if you're wearing a certain color shirt, and they can respond. And then they had, I don't know if anybody remembers, but they had that tree challenge that was big on TikTok. And people were finding out, oh my gosh, this tree responds to me. So when I was in my NDE, I got all of this information that I didn't really realize at the time, because I think I was kind of a little mentally stifled by the analytical side of me that wanted to like make sure that what I was getting was true. But it was just so crazy that I didn't want to talk about it. So it was only when things started happening that I realized, oh, wow, this information is true. But I didn't initially realize that it was true. I just got like experience and information soup, and it was just given to me, and I didn't know what to do with it because it had no context.
I love that. I love how you talked about those other beings. Their insides were glowing. I've had those experiences where, like, I remember being at Monterey, California, where I was literally at this retreat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm off walking by myself, and I'm near the forest and the beach. Literally are right there next to each other, and I felt like my whole inside just glowing. Like I felt like I wasn't very connected to my five senses. I was more in the light body, but I'm still in my body. And I've had other outer body experiences, but this was just like still connected to my body, but not connected to my body at the same time. And I felt my insides glowing, and I felt completely oneness in tune to everything. Everything was consciousness. Even in
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, like I sometimes I'm walking and I see, or I'm driving and I could feel the cactus alive. They're conscious,
Mm-hmm.
or the trees. And so, and I love, I was thinking earlier today is like near death experiencers, they get a shortcut to this. Um,
Yeah.
Yogananda
Mm-hmm.
talked about like Kriya Yoga would be like a shortcut to self realization. But even with near death experiences, you guys get a shortcut. But you can also experience this. And I love how you acknowledge this through spiritual practice and spiritual realizations and awakenings, which I
Mm-hmm.
have had. And so, like the life review, I think that's something I learned through the 12 steps, maybe not as profound and pretty as a near death experience, but I've put I was able to put my consciousness into that other person, and start to question, even just questioning how it may have affected them, how it affected them,
Mm-hmm.
can create change and compassion and understanding.
Right.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah. And it's so important for everybody to have that experience, because that's the sole reason we're here.
mm,
The reason we incarnate. Now, before my experience, I kind of believed in reincarnation, but I also, went to a very fundamental church for a while, which was against reincarnation. So I was like, okay, well, hmm, let's not debate about debatable things. We'll just put that on the shelf and not put too much focus on it. And in my NDE, I realized that we're 100% reincarnated, and we do have other lives. And the reason that we do is because our soul cannot learn everything that it needs to just in this one lifetime. In order for us to be compassionate and understand other people's experiences, we have to be other people. We have to connect with other people, but we also have to, kind of like how I was told to merge with a lily and a tree and things like that. We have to be those things in order to really get it from the human perspective. And once we're done reincarnating, we become a celestial body where our sole existence is we're like the tree, is to
mm,
be still and provide and continue to absorb, energy and give energy. So it's important for us to kind of get those things in our life and to have those spiritual awakenings, because we're a society of hurt people, and hurt people, and it just perpetuates. So we have to stop it somewhere.
Can I ask you a question? Since you study genetics,
Hmm.
since trauma can affect like our gene expression, you know, can a near death experience do something similar or even in quite the opposite in a more healing way with
Yes,
our gene expression?
I would say yes. I don't think that's been scientifically proven in an experimental way with, maybe a double blind experiment. And I don't know if it could possibly. So the best way to kind of figure out if that could happen is to put certain logic together. So we know that DNA can record trauma, and we have several terabytes of DNA. We know that we can actually store information, physical information, on DNA strands, and scientists are actually trying to do that now, to use the DNA as kind of like a program that can store information. The other thing that we know is that trauma can be something that affects a person from generation to generation. A mother's trauma can affect a baby's trauma, can affect a grandchild's trauma, etc. So we can only go by that, but that's the reason why I say yes, because everything has an imprint. Now, speaking from the spirituals, an energy imprints. All energy has a record of its existence, basically, and that's a physics fact. So I personally would say that yes, that the a near-death experience can be imprinted and can imprint on an offspring, a child from that person who's had a near-death experience. That's one of the most interesting questions that I've ever had in a podcast, and I'm glad that you asked it. The other thing I found was very interesting. I only recently discovered this because somebody that we both know is trying to find out if in astrology somebody having a near death experience shows up in their astrology,
Mhm.
if that was destined based on their chart. I always wondered about palms, and I recently went to somebody. I didn't ask them to read my palm, but they did. They didn't know me at all. They didn't know my story, nothing. And even though I believe all the things that I do, is spiritually speaking, metaphysically speaking, I always still approach people when they tell me certain things, like, oh, they're going to tell me my future or read a palm or something like that. I still approach them skeptically, you know, ironically speaking. So this person grabbed my palm and on my right hand, and I've been told this before, but she was the first person that kind of explained further. She said, oh, that's really interesting. And I said, what? She said, well, your lifeline is very long. It's like into your 90s, but you were extended life. It cuts here and then it picks up and it extends. So you weren't supposed to live into your 90s, but you were extended life. And my eyes got big and I looked at her and I didn't say anything. I just said, what about this hand, the other hand? Because she said that the left hand is supposed to kind of record your past, future experiences. And it was the first time I looked at my left hand and I saw that my lifeline, she said, yeah, the lifeline is long. It was the first time I looked at it and saw that there was a break in the lifeline and it extended. So my lifeline starts, it stops, it fades out completely, picks up again and continues, which is when she would say into my 90s. And so I believe that we have ways of recording our experience, or there are ways where our experience is recorded, not just in our soul, but on our bodies as well. And that some of that can be carried to the future. And that's one of the reasons why we're here, to deal with our trauma, to become people of light, to transform our experience, and to stop being a hurt person that hurts other people, because we're actually evolving the next generation. We leave that imprint on the next generation if we can transmute it here. It's all about, life experience is all about alchemy, taking what we have here, and then changing it, transmuting it into a new experience. And that's how we evolve as people as time goes on.
So, like, these experiences have a lasting impact, not just with the individual, but beyond to the future generations. And I think Bruce Lipton's work kind of aligns with that. I mean, it's kind of hard to, I mean, if you look at your experience, like, who were you before you had your near-death experience, and who are you after? And how did your shift of consciousness and your perception and your worldview change? Can that alone change your gene expression through that experience?
Yes, because scientifically and in actuality, we can change our gene expression through that's what epigenetics is all about. What we give our genes, what we feed ourselves, what we do. That's why longevity medicine is so popular. People are surprised that when they do certain things, and now they're finding out different things, supplements that they can take that are natural substances that our body loses over time. If we put that back in, we could look younger, we can feel younger. So it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, that's interesting just to think about, because you hear how much someone comes back like in an altered state, just in a whole different new person, like they were reborn. Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate it. And I also appreciate that you understand that it's not just near-death experiences, and I know I shared this a little bit a while ago, but that other people that are having awakenings, you like connect it, because my friend was on a channel where it was like mostly near-death experiencers stories, and she didn't have that, but she was on she had a spiritual transformative experience. But you see some negative comments on there because she didn't have a near-death experience. But I think an awakening is a death experience.
I think that's like a common human thing that everyone thinks that the bright, shiny thing or the dog and pony show must be the thing that everybody needs to achieve. And, from being on the other side, you realize that things are a lot more simple than that, and a lot more. It's not the bright, shiny thing always that is the thing that we need to achieve. It's the simplicity and the connection is what we're supposed to achieve.
When you were shown stuff through your guides, did they teach you anything that contradicts what we're told about our human origins and history?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Well, it's not commonly accepted that there are ETs, so that was one thing. Also, that we are hybridized beings, that we're not originally from Earth. We're a combination of different ET genetic combinations. And so, and I don't think that that's something that's widely accepted. Some people do see that and understand that. And in genetics, there's lots of information that traditional geneticists come across where they're saying, oh, well, we can't explain this. This must be junk. To me, that doesn't make sense, because an organized God doesn't just create junk just to create junk. So I'd say a few things are things that are kind of, we're moving towards accepting them, but they're not completely accepted yet.
How do you look at death today, life and death?
I look more like at this earth and what we're going through as an experience, and death as real life.
Mm.
Not saying that I'm going, like I would try to get myself there anytime soon, but it is more real, more vivid. It's more aligns with our soul. But a lot of us, we don't really know our soul because we were made to forget.
Yeah, it feels like we're kind of like in a, maybe it's not the right word I'm going to use, but kind of like in a game sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe that movie, The Avatar, has some kind of truth to it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Something just seems, yeah. Sometimes I have certain moments where I just feel like I'm in a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where it doesn't feel real. And that's one of the things that I remember is the other side felt so real and so it just felt more real. Honestly, it felt more like anything is possible. And anything is possible here too, but sometimes it's hard to bring that feeling from there to here and to hold it in place. It's always bouncing around.
Did you see any different like types of colors and stuff versus this normal reality?
Well, yeah, everything was more vivid there. I didn't focus so much on the colors, so I can't remember all of the different colors, but I do know that everything was more vivid. My favorite part of the vivid colors that I saw were in space. That was one of my favorite parts of, my experience.
Did you come back with any types of abilities, like enhanced intuition, psychic abilities, and so on
Mm-hmm.
from your?
Yeah. I came back with enhanced intuitiveness, clairvoyance, clairaudience. Um, Also, really strange things continue to happen to me that are unique. Other people have observed it too, and some people just say, "Oh, you're just very blessed." But it's more like I feel like I still have a string attached to the other side. Like I went on a super highway, like you were talking about before, and now I have a connection. And so there's like a string attached still to the other side where strange things happen. I'll send you a picture and a video I made the other day. I was in my kitchen and I just got a nudge, a spiritual nudge, go upstairs right now. I went upstairs and my room was completely bright, like vividly bright, like unreal, like something you'd see in a movie. And I thought, wow, it's so pretty in here. It's just so bright. And I just wanted to absorb it. But then the science mind kicked in and I said to myself, okay, what's causing this? So I knew it was sunny outside that day, but it was way too much bright, like that, brighter than it usually is. So I went over to the window and I looked out the window and there is this, what I call a portal, because that's what I got, what my spirit guide told me it was a portal. It looked like a portal in the sky. There was like a rainbow inside of it, but it wasn't like a full rainbow. It was just like rainbow spots and colors inside of it. And then there was a brightness behind it. So I'm trying to gaslight myself, trying to be normal, thinking, okay, well, maybe it's just the sun and there's precipitation and it's creating this, whatever. So I pan over and I look to the west and the sun is big and bright in the sky. It's not, and it's far away from this spot. So it's not the sun. So I get clairaudiently portal again. You just shifted timelines. And I did physically feel something. I felt like there was a shift. And so I said to myself, nobody's going to believe this. It's going to sound kooky, And so I took a picture of it and then I recorded it for a while. And I just saw it like little by little. I felt this great feeling. And then like I felt a lot of happiness. I was smiling for no reason other than seeing that. And like, you know how you feel like this really joyful feeling, but you don't know why.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it like faded after a little while. So I captured it. And then when I went back to look at the picture, I blew up the picture. And because sometimes I'm a little dense with my spirit guides, they have to tell me several times because I have that science analytical side of me too. So I blew it up, and lo and behold, in the spot where that anomaly was and the rainbow colors, it had like, have you seen when people depict portals where it's like watery and wavy, like there's an energetic fluctuation right there? It was. And then right after that, I called my daughter, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this. I said, when this happened, after I had heard Portal, I accepted it. And I said, I kind of said a prayer and I was like, God, my spirit guides, I accept this and this new timeline. And this is where I'm taking myself and my daughter there. Lo and behold, like probably an hour later, I had what was a life-changing meeting and experience with a particular situation. And then my daughter said, oh, she called me and something good happened to her. And we were both laughing and joking about the fact that it's because we shifted timelines.
I love that. For someone that never heard the term timelines, what are timelines and what does it mean to shift timelines?
um, Physicists believe that there may be as many as 11 dimensions. And I should say some physicists believe this. And they're not sure how many dimensions there are, but in dimensions, everything is collapsed on top of each other. So dimensions are like me sitting in my room and you're sitting in your room. And we're existing together, but we're in two different dimensions. So a timeline is kind of an extension of that dimension where you can shift back and forth into other dimensions of existence. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. What did your
Mm-hmm.
family say when you opened up to them about your experiences? Were they shocked?
You mean about my near-death
Yeah.
experience? Yes, they were. And I interviewed them because when I was trying to analyze my situation, I was trying to line up events and like CSI my own experience and like figure out, okay, this must have been when this happened and this was going on the outside. And that's why I was experiencing this on the other side and things like that.
Mm.
So they believed it, but they still had a hard time processing it. Except for my daughter. She totally was like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Were you at the scene at all, like in the hospital, like outside your body? Not just like in a whole different dimensions and worlds, but were you literally outside of like outside of your body in the
Mm-hmm.
room where your body was?
Yeah. One of the times I was in a procedure room. And that's when I was saying that, I was kind of arguing with the doctors, thinking, not understanding why they couldn't hear me and why they were talking about me while I was there. So that was one. And then when I was hearing my friends singing the songs, that was another time.
I think from our last conversation, I remember you saying how the doctors were shocked when you came
Mm-hmm.
back. It was more like
Mm-hmm.
a miracle because
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happened? Oh, go ahead.
Huh?
Sorry. No,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was
I
saying
was
what
going to say, one of them said, said to me, but definitely several told my family that they'd never seen that happen before. So they completely did not expect like they never experienced that in all of their career. I was given a less than 1% chance of survival. So that's pretty much like, and then most people who survive being on life support, ECMO, usually die within a year after, just from all the trauma to the body and the experience. And that was 9 years ago now. So yeah.
How would you define what people call God?
Oh, that's a really good question. What people call God, or what I define God as?
Maybe both.
So what I define God as is God is an energetic being who created all of us in order to express itself and experience itself. So God, if you imagine God is an artist, God is a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, like God is everything, and in order for God to express itself, it's created us so that we can be the experience. And so that's what I think God is. And I I had a download before that God was kind of like a child itself, had a mind of a child itself, and where the mind was very free, expressive, loving, kind of like how children are. And that's one of the reasons, like scripts, like the spiritual text, like the Bible says that we're to be like children, is not so much like to be immature or to, but become like a child, meaning in your expression and in your freedom of spirit and your love, things like that.
I love that. I shared this a while back because about a couple months ago, I was walking by the lake where I walk my dogs every morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see a father and his daughter who's like 4 years old, 3 years old,
Mm-hmm.
4 years old, and they're facing the lake, looking at the water, the ducks and the fish.
Mm-hmm.
And we're on the path walking the trail, and the daughter turns around and sees us, and I see her looking at in a pure state of consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at
Mm-hmm.
life in action, right?
Mm-hmm.
No filters yet. But when her father turned around, I didn't know exactly what his filters were, but it was clear that he was looking through his filtered lenses and
Mm-hmm.
all his conditioning and
Mm-hmm.
labeling that we
Mm-hmm.
we acquire as we
Mm-hmm.
get older, right? And
Yeah.
I just noticed I was shown clearly the difference. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, damn, that was crazy. That was a crazy experience. Like, who does that when they're walking their dog? These are real experiences. And yeah, and it brought me to that scripture. And I know some
Mhm.
people are like, well, let's look at the root meaning. What did this mean? There's so many different meanings in each
Mhm.
scripture,
There is.
depending on your level of consciousness.
Exactly. Hmm.
And I
It's
think
like a Rubik's Cube. It's stacked, and
it is.
each piece has a meaning.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you're right.
Mhm.
Do you have anything else we haven't talked about that you would like to discuss that comes to mind? Or
Um, I would just like people um, to remember that although we're in the shift, we're in the midst of the shift right now. Um, remember that hurt people hurt people. And every day, if you wake up and you do your best to not present yourself in your life from a place of hurt, but rather from a place of healing or love, or even just a desire to understand, we will get through this a lot faster. We have to go through what we're going through in order to shift and transition, but we'll get through a lot faster if we all realize that on an individual level more quickly. And then the other thing is that the life that you're living is not the life that you're here for. Meaning that you're just living a very small part of your entire soul's existence. So try to remember that in everything that you do. And try to remember what's really important. It's not being the biggest, the best, the fastest, the strongest, or whatever. It's about, because once you leave this life, all of that's going to go with it. It's about your soul and how you transform so that one day you will be that celestial body.
With all the hate, the discrimination, the racism going on right now, the chaos, the separation, the us against them mentality, and you experiencing that merging experiences with our divine oneness with the all of life. How do we go back to that? I mean, the more we think we're separate from one another, the more chaos it seems like we cause each other because we're in that conscious separation. How do we go back to that? I mean, it's for me, it's hard to even watch at times, just how much hatred is going on within our world. All this unnecessary suffering because of our forgetfulness. I mean, everyone always wants to talk about the Matrix and like it's trendy, but they don't realize they're in it with that hatred, these label conditionings.
Right. And the biggest thing is that people have a hard time putting in the work to transmute their existence. So the way that we get back to it is people are way too focused on what other people are doing and and what they're not doing, and not focused enough on themselves. I'm not saying not focus on other people at all. I'm saying it needs to be balanced. It needs to be equal, to focus on ourselves and transmuting our own experience. And that comes from daily consistency, meditation, resolving pain, so that we don't perpetuate that pain. And that's really how we're going to, get there.
Thank you. I'm going to end it with the Thich Nhat Hanh quote, if you don't mind. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "You carry Mother Earth within you. She is not outside of you. Mother Earth is not just your environment. In that insight of inner being, it is possible to have real communication with the Earth, which is the highest form of prayer." And I think your emerging was the highest form of prayer and communication you had, because you felt that oneness. You knew you experienced it, and so I really appreciate your experiences and what you do for humanity.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, take care. Namastizzle. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a play. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on the day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.